This is Meet Your Rep, a candid conversation with the members of the Legislature of the Virgin Islands. Senators are a critical component in every democracy, serving as the voice of the people. Join us for the entire series as we introduce you to all 15 members of the 35th Legislature.
Welcome to Meet Your Rep, and joining me is Senator Javan James. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Thank you for having us here today. When I say us, it's Officer Senator Javan James,
Yes.
so thank you.
Yes. You know what? Let's talk about a little bit about your life. We're going to start from the beginning. We're going to go right in the middle. We're going to get somewhere in the end because, you continue to do things. Talk about a little bit about your family.
Well, my mom is from the St. Kitts Nevis Federation, and my dad as well. They got married in 1981 or 82, one of them, 1981. Had my brother when they moved to the U.S. Virgin Islands, had myself, Javan James. My brother is Jonathan James Jr. My sister as well, Janila E. James. She's the last. We all attended the Perby Lawson Elementary School.
Dolphins.
Yeah, of course. And then from there on, we went on to the Elena L. Christian Junior High School. I attended the St. Croix Educational Complex for 3 years, and I finished my last year at the St. Croix Central High School. Yeah, so that's basically my life in a nutshell.
So basically, you was the typical Crucian child, went through all the different public schools, elementary, Elena Christian, Central High School. So that's more or less my kind of thing too, what I did too as well.
Most definitely.
So let's talk about your immediate family, wife, 2 children, and talk about them. How do you balance that as you still have to be a dad and you still have to be Senator Javan James? How you balance that family and still work?
Well, first off, my wife is Shamira James. I have a son by the name of Javan E. James Jr. He's the last. The middle child is Janice, and the eldest is Amira. They all attend public school. But recently, I had my son attend my mother's school. My mother has a home school as well. So, long story short, as far as balancing the work and life, I try to educate my children on what I actually do for a living. So when I leave the house, I would tell them, hey, Daddy is going to St. Thomas to do X, Y, and Z. Especially when we're on the campaign trail, I would tell them, like, hey, Daddy need to win, because if Daddy do not win, I cannot be able to take care of all the stuff in the house, and everybody in my office, they might have to look at different jobs. So I let them know the importance of my role. So when I do step out, they know that I'm putting on my Batman cape to save the world.
Right.
Yeah.
It must feel good to, you're among 14 of your other colleagues to come home to the children and to your wife to like a peace of mind sometimes. I'm pretty sure that's a great feeling to come home to. Yeah, Daddy's home, Yeah, so any more on that?
Well, yes, I have to shout out my boy, Donnell Phillip Blackis.
The Blackis.
I remember when I first had my daughter, but before she even came into the picture, before she was even born, we were at Rainbow Beach having some fun on the beach, sitting down, having some conversation. And we were talking about fatherhood, and he told me, listen, you're going to see something. When your child is old enough to speak and you come through that door and you hear Daddy, that is going to be the best feeling ever. And to be honest with you, after a long days of work, before I even reach into the house, before the car even park up, all I'm hearing in the house is Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. So that's the best feeling in the world. So that motivates me to come home every day.
Yes, I can relate on that. You know what? Let's talk about your childhood. And speaking about your kids, you was a child once upon a time, growing up in the Castle, Coakley, Peters Rest area. Tell me about that upbringing, growing up in Castle, Peters Rest area, and let's tell me about what was that like.
Well, if anybody know the demographics of Castle Coakley, we have most individuals from St. Kitts, Nevis, Antigua, and those are 3 areas or 3 places in the Caribbean where my family is from. So it's a small knit community. Everybody in there knows each other. No one in there is a stranger. So I grew up having like a big brother, a big sister, another addition of a mother, another addition of a father. Everyone in there looked out for each other. So long story short, my mom got married to a guy from St. Kitts. That was her second marriage, Frank Johnson. And he was a Christian. So certain things I couldn't do in the house. So it was kind of bored being in the house. So I spent a lot of time on the basketball court until I ran into my good friend, Dennis Pompalaibad. You know, at the time we were attending the Elena L. Christian Junior High School, and we started to get involved in music. And I must admit, I thank God every day for music because it saved me, prevented me from getting into trouble. So, you know, Pompa lived in Peter's Rest at one time. So I spent a lot of time in Peter's Rest, even though I'm from Castle Coakley.
Oh, cool. Now, you did mention you're a musician as well. I think that's a part of you that a lot of people don't know about. They know your new role, the current role that you have now. I must say that the different things that you have done in terms of the advocating for the musicians, people who play instruments, so forth and so on, like, you know, you're very big on that. Tell me about how music has changed your life to the role that you have now.
Well, it took me a while to realize the true role that music has in a community, and it speaks to arts and culture. So now that I'm to a mature age, I'm seeing the importance of preserving the culture and the arts. So, you know, when I first started off, it was not about the culture or the art. It was just having fun and killing time. But now I'm in a capacity of a senator and a leader. I have to make sure that I promote things, not saying I'm going to control the music industry. That is not my duty. But to make sure that when I attach myself to things, it represents the culture and the arts. So when we do honor or speak about these individuals on the floor, it's not in vain. You know, so I've been holding a lot of events, putting things together for the community, and that's something about me that will never stop. Long after I'm finished with politics, I will still be involved in music because music saved my life. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like what I always say this quote, and what Daddy Friday say? I know you're going to finish it.
Never give up music.
I know you're going to finish that. So tell us a little bit about your educational endeavors. I know from high school to, and like right after high school, what was your role right after that?
I took a different route. Right after high school, I relocated. Well, not relocated, I went to St. Thomas to live.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I remember that.
My girlfriend at the time, who's a Crucian, she was attending UVI. And at the time, I was bored. So I was like, I'm going to follow my girlfriend.
Right.
So
we all did that at one point.
So I ended up going to St. Thomas, and music followed me as well. So I ended up playing for a band in St. John called Awi Band. And
we are familiar with that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, you know, so as you can see, I never really ran away from music. It was always there. And then one day I got a call saying, hey, this thing ain't gonna work anymore. So I said, what? So I had my black self back to St. Croix. And I started working in the refinery.
Okay.
So I took a different route. When all my friends and, schoolmates went to college, I went straight into music, like I said, in St. John. But what really propelled me to take life seriously is when I worked at the Jovensa refinery. I was making some good money. I took part in the basic operating training program where I became a certified operator. And up to this very day, I can work in any refinery around the world. So today or tomorrow, things go south, I always have something I can fall back on. And then lastly, I got certified as an advanced wastewater treatment operator at the refinery.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I did not know that. Okay.
So I have some certifications under my belt. And then I got tired of the Jovensa thing. So I went to New York. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to New York and turn a millionaire. Yeah, right. I wanted to pursue music as well, but it didn't work out. So one day I was walking through Brooklyn and I saw a recruiter, and I went into the office. They tried to get me to go into the Marines. Thank God I didn't. They tried to have me sign up for the Navy. Thank God I didn't, because I can't be on a ship all day like that. No. And then they said the Army, and I was like, no, I don't want to see any combat. So the Air Force. So I went into the Air Force, August of 2012, October of 2012. I passed boot camp with flying colors. And from there, I went to basic training. I spent about 3 months over there until I got medically disqualified. Now, I had an option to get a different job or to separate. They wanted me to fix helicopters. I am not mechanically inclined. So I was like, Javan James is not good with tools. I am not fixing any helicopters. So I separated and I went back to Miami, had a decent job, and lastly came back to St. Croix in 2014.
You know what? I've known you for as long as I think I knew you. I've never known that you were certified in all these things, and you do keep up with your certifications.
Well, it's not a matter of being recertified. It's just a matter of taking a refresher course.
Right.
Anytime I do decide to get back into that field.
Well, the mechanic part, you just kind of blew my mind with that. So that's really amazing, especially for us having a very interesting aviation field here in the Virgin Islands, you know. So kudos to you in that, you know. And speaking of your current job that you have now as a senator in the 35th legislature, you know, what was your desire? What wanted you to seek office in the first place? Because from being a musician, being in that front, holding a microphone, producing, what like, you know what, I'm gonna be a senator. What pushed you to that?
Well, I mentioned 2014 as the last thing in the conversation we had, but I wanted to touch on two individuals, Nicholas Daddy Friday and Alwyn Baptist Jr. Growing up, those were the only two individuals I wanted to be like.
Right.
Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. However, I was able to accomplish something that Daddy Friday never accomplished. And as you know, Daddy Friday had a strong passion and interest for politics. So
right.
I must say I accomplished something that Daddy Friday didn't accomplish, and the other way around, I didn't accomplish what he wanted or what he became good at, which is music.
Right.
So long story short, I moved back home in 2014. At the time, it was the height of the 2014 election. I was living with my mom. And my mom told me one day, do you want to come to a campaign headquarters? And I told my mom, I don't have time for all that nonsense. I'm going to stay home. She said, Javan, come. He's a good guy. Come. I said, who he is? She said, Novel Francis. So I said, you know what? Let me go with my mom. And I attended the campaign headquarters meeting. There was a list for individuals to sign up for various committees. I signed up for various committees. By the time you know it, I was out there campaigning with him, going all over the place. He was taking me up and down with him. And then after the election, I asked him to consider me for any job, because I was just hungry at the time. At the time, I was working at the Buccaneer. And anything at the time would have been better than just being on the beach.
Right.
Because I was giving out towels and telling people hi at the gate and that stuff. I was getting bored. Right. And then I had my child on the way as well, Janice. So Novel said, I would do everything in my power to make sure that you get a job. Now, he didn't say work in his office, you know. He said he's going to do everything in his power to get me a job. And so said, so done. I worked with him in the 31st legislature and the 32nd legislature, and I resigned on July 7th of 2017, which was my birthday. And I threw my hat in the ring for the upcoming election. And I won on my first try, got in the 33rd, the 34th, and the 35th. But I want to give credit to God. It was God that brought me home in time in 2014, not just to meet Novel Francis, but to meet my wife and to start my family.
That's an amazing story. And one of the things that you touched on is Senator Francis. How was it once upon a time working for him, and now you guys are colleagues? What did you learn from him, and how was it now? Because, I mean, there's not always you guys are going to agree on everything, because, you know, he's a bit of a, you can say like an older brother to you. So, you know, there have been times I'm pretty sure you guys disagree, but you come back to where, you know what, it's for the good of the people. So share those comparisons for me.
Well, it's easy. The 2 times I served in the majority was under his leadership.
Right.
So it shows you that I believe in him regardless of what. And as far as being able to work with him regardless of our differences is easy. It is very easy. You never outshine the person who put you on. And some might say, what do you mean by outshine? He know better than you. Yeah, but he has been here on this planet way before me, and I believe in respecting my elders.
Right.
And at the end of the day, when he decided to hang up his hat, I would be the big boy. So until, or the big man, I should say.
Right.
So until then, I'ma just treat him as big brother. You know, that's big brother.
You know, and I want to stay there for a minute. And you know, you entered in the 32nd, right?
31st.
The 31st legislature. Javan James in the 31st, and Javan James in the 35th. Are those two different people? Because I'm saying that you had to grow.
So I have to correct myself. When you said entered, I start working in the 31st.
Well, as a senator. So let me clarify that. When you enter in to be a senator
in the 33rd.
In the 33rd, and Javan James in the 33rd, and Javan James in the 35th. You know, you had the 34th. So you know, compare those two people.
Well, myself in the 33rd, I was still shocked, like, yo, I win. I was like, I won. But when I realized that it was serious is when I went on the Senate floor and started attending the hearings and seeing like, whoa, this thing is bigger than what people think it is. Mm-hmm. So I realized like, hey, you already promised your wife you're not going back to music. You know, so band wasn't even in the equation or in the conversation. Right. It was like, I have to do this. This is my new life. So in the 33rd, I was able to pass a lot of meaningful legislation, mm-hmm. and I went against the grain, and that showed leadership based on what people told me out there. So it put me in a situation to be re-elected. The people saw it fitting to put me back in there, and I want to say thank you to the people of St. Croix and the entire U.S. Virgin Islands who believe in me. So here am I in the 35th, now chairing the Committee on Economic Development and Agriculture compared to what I first chaired, which was the Committee on Youth, Sports, Parks, and Recreation. You can see where I went from being that youth senator to now taking on bigger challenges. Mm-hmm. So, like I always tell my friends or whatever, I'm the youngest veteran in the Senate. Mm-hmm. So it feels good to be a veteran and to still have that youthness to me. So,
but you definitely see your growth from where you were to where you are right now. So, you know, I mean, we're more or less, I'm a little bit older than you are, but we're more or less in that same age bracket. But I think the Javan James then and the Javan James now, you're going to see your growth because you can definitely go in a room and you're not going to be lost in the conversation. Chances are this Javan James is going to be leading the conversation. So kudos to you when it comes to that. Characterize what you bring to the table as a senator.
Innovation, creation, and transparency. Mm-hmm. I'm not reinventing the wheel in anything that I've done thus far. Like everything I've done as a chair of the Committee on Youth, Sports, Parks, and Recreation, those are things that we enjoyed as a child. Mm-hmm. The card trap, Polly Joseph, horse racing, the police athletic league facility, and the sports commission, all those things, I either pass legislation to make it happen, provided oversight, or work with my colleagues on the executive branch to make sure that it's funded in the budget. So I did not reinvent the wheel. However, as far as my innovation and creation that I mentioned, I'm always thinking like, where will the Virgin Islands be in the next 20 years? Mm-hmm. Not just for me, but for my children and my children's friends and peers. So for me, it's like, let's put things right now so the children can enjoy it. But by the time those children become an adult like us, they have something to look forward to, better infrastructure, and the list goes on. So as far as what I bring to the table is honesty, like I said, transparency, innovation, thinking out of the box, and of course, being able to build consensus, because one thing I've learned on the campaign trail, you would always hear individuals say, I. Right. And then when they come in here, they realize it's not I. I will send you home and you'll be a one-term senator. Mm-hmm. So one thing I've learned is the importance of saying we.
And kudos to you on that, because, you know, we've seen it time and time again, but I must give you credit. You know, you have a really good relationship with most, if not all, of your colleagues, and in the different legislations you push. Let me ask you though, with all this passing bills, writing legislation, colleagues, senator talks, you're talking to all the different politicians. What is your average day like? You know, like, man, I just don't, you know, you have to come to work, but like, you know what is your day like?
My average day is probably a bit different from some of my colleagues because everything I do is through my iPad. Not saying they don't have iPads. Just want to make it clear so colleagues don't beat me up. But everything I do is digital.
Right.
Of course, if individuals want to see me in person, I would tell my staff, schedule a meeting, but everything is just digital. You know, Microsoft Teams, WhatsApp, you know, so
you're plugged in. Yeah,
plugged in. A different form of leadership and governance. However, as far as I wake up, you know, I take pride in making sure that I see the children leave to go to school.
Right.
Unless I have a Senate hearing to go to St. Thomas where I have to wake up early, then I'm unable to see them. But the first thing I do is try to engage with them and then wake up, go to the office. But I don't really spend much time sitting behind of a desk. Like, before I had this interview, you saw I was in my jeans, so I spent a lot of time in the field, being able to have individuals touch me.
Hit in the street.
And see me.
People like that that tangency to just like, I can touch and feel the senator. I can call him at any time, and you know, whether it be Senator James or Javan, you know, people like that. Let me ask you, with all that you have accomplished in your short time with the car track and, you know, pushing the racetrack and pushing Polly Joseph Stadium, PAL, and everything else, we didn't even mention everything.
I haven't mentioned everything, the monument for the Fireborn Queens.
There you go.
So many other things. I can't even remember them right now, but my office and we did a lot, but go ahead.
But in your short term, like what are your plans for your short term, you know, from the 35th as of right now, for this term? What is your short term goals right now?
Well, when I first came into the Senate, I was all over the place in the 33rd. And in the 34th, I wasn't chairing a committee, so I had no choice but to focus on legislation. So now I'm back in the majority. The only thing I plan to focus on solely is chairing the Committee on Economic Development and Agriculture. So as the chair of that committee, as you can see, we had our first hearing on February 8th. It was a success. We were able to drill down on the Department of Agriculture, getting more specifics as far as the territorial agricultural plan. I have a hearing scheduled for March. I think it's the first week of March or the second Wednesday in March, where we plan to bring in the Port Authority. You know, they have that big project with the Henry E. Rollson Airport, the Cyril E. King Airport, and the different projects under the Port Authority. I plan to bring in the Department of Tourism to hold them accountable, find out what's going on with their financials as far as the last St. Croix Festival. And now we're about to enter into the St. Thomas Carnival. And we plan to bring in DPNR because DPNR has a certain level of, like agriculture attached with aquaculture and the marine life and those stuff. So we plan to get a status updates from those individuals. And then after those 2 committee hearings, I plan to bring some meaningful legislation in the areas of economic development and agriculture. Like, I'm going to give you a quick example. I have legislation to assist Executive Carlton Dow, Executive Director Carlton Dow, with the P3 project. That's the public-private partnership project for both airports. And I have other legislation to provide a stimulus to the farmers, the serious farmers, to buy certain equipment and to help in other areas in which they may lack in. So we're already working and we have things going.
You know, I hear you, and all I can think to myself is, now that you're the chairperson for this particular committee, how much things really commingle and go together, you know, with tourism, economic development, DPNR, and one way or the other, those different facets touch each other. And now you really have quite a bit on your plate, you know, in that aspect. Let me ask you, though, we talk about your short term. What do you want your legacy to look like? You know, like going into the 35th and, you know, what is all said and done, and when you're ready to hang up your quote-unquote political hat, and I'm pretty sure you have other endeavors. What would you like your legacy to be?
I just want to make sure that every single legislation that was submitted by the office of Senator Javan James and has become law, that we actually can see it being enforced and to see all those projects come into fruition. I want to be able to attend the ribbon cutting ceremony for the Police Athletic League facility, for the airport project, the P3 project, the Pali Joseph, because we gave an additional $8 million in the 33rd legislature, where we already saw where we had the car track. I want to be there for the ribbon cutting ceremony for both horse tracks. Of course, I want to see St. Croix finish first.
Right.
You know, I want to be there for the ribbon cutting ceremony for the erection of the Fireburn Queen monument, in which I funded and passed legislation in the 34th legislature. I want to see the VI Sports Commission become a force to reckon with as far as sports tourism in the Caribbean, because we appropriate an appropriation of $1 million every year in the budget. I want to see it expand and other individuals benefit from that pool of money. So as far as legacy, I just want to see all those projects that I put on the books to just be completed, so I can sit back one day as a grandfather and tell my children and my grandchildren, like, yo, Daddy and his colleagues did that. So that's all I want to see happen.
I think you're on the right path, you know, and kudos to you once again. And let me ask you, with all that said and done, give me any your final thoughts before we wrap up.
In my final thoughts, I just want to remind the people of St. Croix and the entire U.S. Virgin Islands, the role of a senator is to pass legislation, to provide oversight, in which we do in those hearings, we ask the necessary questions, and lastly, appropriate funds. And as a member of the Committee on Finance, I look forward to those hearings in which we hold the Department of Finance, OMB, and the other departments and agencies accountable so they can spend the money that we put in the budget. I look forward to those budget hearings starting in June or July to make sure that we appropriate the necessary funds for the specific nonprofits and other organizations and entities and departments in this community. And lastly, I plan to work with my Democratic colleagues. You know, I have a lot to prove. You know, at one point I switched from Democrat to Independent and I went back to Democrat. So not saying I have to prove myself to anyone, but I have to really show them, like, hey, playtime is over and it's time to put aside the differences and really work for the best interests of the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands. And lastly, I just want to tell the people of St. Croix, thank you once again. I know I said I wasn't running, and you guys gave me another opportunity. And sometimes I wonder, like, wow, I'm still here.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you once again, Senator. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Senator Javan James Sr. And thank you for viewing with us and the listening and audience. And be sure to look out for this episode on Facebook and YouTube coming near you. And until next time, this is Alvin Burke for Legit TV.